Mostly everyone will say it's character driven. Like there's just no doubt that that's kind of what's going on. So like I will actually launch a whole book or a series with a conversation. I think personally, just because this is how I like to get sucked in really quickly to a book, and I don't have the patience to read Tolkien anymore, for example. Like I just can't do that. So I always start with either an action sequence or a conversation. And that's just because it's easy for me. And I might edit out that first scene later because it's going to turn out to not be important. But just to get me right in really quickly, that's always the way I do. So I don't even begin with I very rarely describe the setting or anything. I used to. And I, frankly, sometimes that is now when I pick up a book, sometimes it's pretty easy to spot the debut author because they spend a little too much time at the beginning talking about the setting or something like that. And I'm like, let's get to it. Or the weather, yeah. Just a stormy night.
That's okay. My story is like in 1880s New York. I went for the Marvel comic. Like I'm not alt history. I'm Marvel Comics version in the sense that there will be a President Obama someday in my world. Like I'm putting superheroes into that world as best I can rather than creating an alternate history. And so like whenever they reached out for something, I had to figure out what they were going to grab. And I would say that the first 6 months for me as a first time doing it was getting to the point where I knew what they were going to reach out for. I mean, I still remember the moment when the character, I have a whole scene apropos of this morning where the character wakes up hungover and he drags his ass down. It's a long description of him dragging his ass down the corridor, and he gets to the mirror, and I'm like, wait, toothbrush? What? No? Yes? I have no idea. And so, it led to a couple hours of research, finding out that, yes, toothbrushes existed, but not in New York at that period. You have to grab a rag because they brush, they wipe their teeth with a rag in the morning, and slowly you get a little more confidence and you build. So that's the one. That was a big part of the 101 for me, was just getting to the point where I could feel some. I'm sure I'm still going to get nailed like a piece of sheetrock.
Yes, you are.
But take it from them.
The internet will tell you.
But at least I feel like I can reach out and grab it. I know what the characters are going to do, and I understand. And once your head is in that world, that was 101 for me. Like getting to the point where I had my head in the world, I could see the characters, what they were going to do.
And also learning to ask yourself that question at that point. Like you have to learn, if you're writing all history or historical going for some form of historical accuracy, to stop yourself before putting the word down and being like, do I have to look that up? Like, did that really exist? Like I, for example, had the word syringe recently. Like I had to decide, did they have syringes in 1876? I don't know. Here we go, history of the syringe. And
down the rabbit
hole
on Wikipedia.
3 hours later, I know all about vivisections.
Yeah, the word Zeppelin appears in Bone Shaker once because I'm an idiot.
Right, because it's 19.
Yeah, it's 1880. There's no Zeppelin.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to find another word for an airship. You're trying to mix up the nouns, I think for me, I come at this kind of from an academic background, but not really very interesting one, so my answer is kind of boring, and then I start with money. When I decided I was going to do something set in alternate Seattle, I know a lot about the old economy there because I know a lot of local historians. That's a lot of fun. But say I destroy the usual stuff, well, what's left? Well, you have Puget Sound. You will have some shipping still. You have the rail down in Tacoma. You still have a lot of timber. You still have San Francisco burning down every few years and needing timber. And then the one useful thing that comes out of this calamity, particularly with this franchise, is that this terrible gas can be distilled into a street drug, which is very valuable. So you start with the economy. What kind of people are going to work in this world? What kind of jobs does this suggest? Will it suggest some merchant marines, some sailors, some airmen? It suggests, because these are the old, it's still the 19th century, and they're kind of the rugged individualists who have headed west. So you got a lot of those guys, and you probably have some old timber guys, and you have some logging guys, and there was a steam-powered sawmill in Seattle. It was the Microsoft of its day. Quite literally. It was like this huge forward leap as far as people were concerned. And so I try to start with that, like, well, what does this place look like, and what does this place suggest for people to earn a living at? Because the money is what drives, it drives anything. It drives the people who, it tells you who lives there. And then you have to ask yourself what kind of conflicts ensue, So anyway, I just start with the money because I'm boring, but it always tends to work out.
Or your background. I think you can, you can go any deterministic approach you want. You can be like, I'm an archaeologist, so the objects are really important to me. So, my world building is going to be drawn from found objects and material science. You know, that's kind of what interests me. So that leaks in a lot.
Yeah, you know, big thing for me was I decided to put it in. I'm a native New Yorker. Decided to put it in New York, and really wanted to show the love of the city. And you know, I think you can, and I think as you dig, you always find more, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
like I mean, it's impossible. I mean,
The stories start to suggest themselves.
right for every 3 hours that you spend down the rat hole, like it does pay off in the sense that like you suddenly, you know, you have more to work with, and people are more interesting. Yeah, things. I mean, you were talking about some of the characters in some of the other panels. Like, people are more interesting than you can ever. Yeah, real people are more interesting than you can ever imagine. So I have to say, like, there's some moments. Like, there's a tenement. There was like, you know, doing all this research. Like, they opened a tenement museum in New York. They found a 100-year-old. They found a building that had basically been just used for storing clothes for 100 years, and most of the rooms were still intact. And just going somewhere and seeing all this stuff that you've been reading about, and actually having a physicality of like, I mean, that's. I don't know, you know, I wasn't, there were no tears, but it was close. Like, it's nice. I mean, you see it and you can feel these characters, you know, you can feel the world that you've spent so much time in just a little bit closer, and that's a lovely payoff. Like, there's something, I'm sure as an archaeologist you get that more often than the rest of us combined. But
I'm obsessed with cooking, but you can't smell what it smelled like, and you can't taste what it tasted like unless you try and recook the thing. So I like, one of my minor like obsessive hobbies is trying to cook ancient foods of ancient cultures, which means growing like lovage and rue and strange herbs and things, because I want it, and it's completely
I
different.
mean, that's a useful conversation to have, because probably the best writing advice I ever got, like just on a really, really clinical, you know, pay attention to this level, is if you can, and it goes for world building, it goes for anything else, appeal to all of the senses on every single page, and you will never lose them. You know, it's easy to show people what things look like. It's easy to talk about what things sound like. You got to talk about texture and scent. But it's not like, and she smelled this. I mean, well, that does. In the 19th century, there was probably a lot of smelling things. Oh boy, indoor plumbing. But I mean, but you can like make comparisons that reference things that, like, you know, reference to lemons, or well, it was like this color of lemon or this sort of that. You know, people will read all of the connotation and with the words.
You can use your metaphors to build your world.
Yeah.
So if you're describing the way an eye color of something, you can say, you know, she had eyes that looked like lavender candy. You know, and there you have described what someone's eyes look like, and you have introduced the concept that they had lavender candy in this time period. You know, so you can like do fun things.
What that might taste like.
And you soap, apparently.
Yeah, kind of.
But that's part of being a writer, is you are going to put your work out there to your audience, and there are people who are going to hate it, and there are people who are going to love it, and there are people who are going to get really upset because you glazed your pottery fragment and there wasn't leaded glazed yet. You know, and you just have to be like, okay.
Pick up the pieces of your shattered life and
You actually, my rule of thumb is, at least they bought the book.
yeah, that's I'm sorry I disappointed you. Thanks for buying it.